Okay, this is Frederick Noad, First Book for the Guitar, Part 1, Exercise 5. And we're doing the notes mainly on the second string, B, C, and D. Though he does mix an occasional note that you've already had, E, F, and G from the first string. So you've got a total of 6 different notes. And I'm going to play it slowly, your part, and then your part faster, and then the teacher's part, my part, slowly, and then faster. So you can practice it slow with me, and then a little quicker, when you get it more comfortable with it. Okay, so slowly, your part. Let's play it together. 1, ready, go. 2, 3, 2, 3. 2, 3. Okay, now we're going to do it a little faster. 1, ready, go. Okay, now my part, the teacher's part that you play along with slowly. 1, 2, go. 1, 2, 3. 2, 3. Okay, now play along with me a little faster. 1, ready, go. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And toward the end, we can kind of put on the brakes a little bit, and retardando is what we call that, or rallentando. It's like a wheel slowing down. So now with the second string notes, just to review, the center line of the music staff is the open B which we had in the first lessons when we learned the first three open strings, E, B, and G. So you've already had this note. And now the space above that B is C, and that's the first fret of the second string. And then the line above that C, second line from the top of the staff, is D. Okay, and that's third fret, third finger. So you have B, C, and D. Now, if you look at the phrases, and if you remember what a phrase is, it's four bars generally is a phrase. Sometimes it might be 2 bars, sometimes it might be 8 bars, but typically it's 4 bars, and that's the way it is in this melody. The first phrase would be 1, bar 2, bar 3, bar 4. And that's the first statement. And he ends with index on the D, and then he starts the next phrase with index on that same D, same note, but it's quarter notes. And the second phrase would be 1, measure 2, measure 3, 4. And notice there's usually a dotted half note on the last measure of the phrase. And that's kind of like punctuation. That's like putting a period at the end of the sentence. So now, the next phrase starts with the pinky on G instead of third finger. And the reason we use the pinky on G is so that we can go to the third finger on the very next note, D. So it's not good to use the same finger because it'll sound chopped up. It'll sound like compared to, see how much more connected that is when you use 2 different fingers, and they're kind of like pistons, you know, one's up while the other one's down, and they work together, like they work with each other, right? They're flexible, okay? So the third phrase, 1, 2, 3. And then you have an F. So in that phrase, he has all three notes of the first string mixed in with some second string notes. And actually, yeah, all 6 notes are in that third phrase. It's a well-devised exercise because, you know, he kind of makes it more challenging as you go along. And then the next phrase is just like the B phrase, so we'll call it B again. And it starts with index and ends with index. And so there's 2 places where at the end of a phrase, at the end of phrase 1, you'll end with index and then start the B phrase also with index. Same finger twice in a row, but that's okay if you're in 2 different phrases. It's not okay in the middle of the same phrase that you use 2 middle fingers in a row or 2 indexes in a row. You want to learn strict alternating and make sure you double check your alternating. And then also the C phrase, the one that starts with that pinky on the G, that's phrase C, you'll end up with index on the D, and you'll also start the next phrase, B, with index. And you might ask, why is he doing that? Is there a reason he's starting the next phrase with the same finger? Yes, there is. And that's because of the string crossings. Like let me just give you an example. If you assign your middle finger to the first string and your index to the second string, and you alternate them like that, middle, index, middle, index. That's the more natural way that we would want to change strings. It's easier than if you did it the opposite and did index on the first string and middle on the second string. That's what I call an awkward string crossing. It's much better if it's middle to index, or if you're going the other direction from the second to the first string, index, middle. But if you're going from the second to the first string, middle, index, it feels a little bit awkward. It's just not quite, and that's the way we play chords. We would play middle, index on the first and second strings for a chord, which we're not doing yet, but we wouldn't do index on the first string and middle on the second string with chords. Like if we were using all three fingers, I would use I, M, A on the G, B, and E strings, like that. I wouldn't put them opposite and put I on the E string and M on the second string and the A finger on the third string and play that way. There might be a guy who would learn it that way, but that's actually opposite of nature, I think. It's more natural to play this way than to play that way. And but sometimes you do have to do awkward string crossings. There's no way around it sometimes. So you should be able to do an awkward string crossing. You should be able to cross strings either M-I or I-M. I kind of missed that note, but so the reason he's starting on the B phrase with index is so that, this string crossing is I-M, I-M-I, and that's the way it was in the first phrase when you went M-I-M-I, okay? So he's keeping the string changes homogeneous to where they're the easier way of doing them. And we're beginners at this stage, so we don't want too much of a challenge, okay? When we get into the next exercise, 6, you will have to do several awkward string crossings, okay? But with this one, just really be aware. Another thing you don't want to do is if you look at the third measure where you're changing strings and you're going C, D, E, D, you don't want to drag your middle finger over two strings. You might think I'm doing a rest stroke and it's already resting on the next string I'm going to play, so I'll just play that same finger twice. At this stage, we don't want to do that. Occasionally, I'll play a piece where I'll drag a finger, something like that. But I'm doing it very consciously, and it's much more advanced piece, music. So here, we don't want to just do what the hand wants to do. If the hand feels like it wants to use the same finger to drag and go to the next string, I call that dragging one finger across two strings. I remember a student a while back, this was quite a while back, that it would affect his rhythm. Like he would go like, and he would drag quicker than he's playing the other notes in the measure. And so, it changed the rhythm. And he would do that every time he dragged his fingers, and I could not get him not to do that. He just would not alternate his fingers, and that was a sticking point with that student. We couldn't go forward from there because he wouldn't change anything. And so you have to be flexible. You have to work with things, and so it's very important. Like when you go M, I, M, to go I, and alternate strictly within the phrase. And like I said, it's okay to end a phrase with I and start the next phrase with I if there's a good reason to do that. And Noad does that here because he's thought it out. And That's the one thing, students will ask me all the time, well, if I have a melody that doesn't have any alternating, how do I know how to do it? And you have to kind of work it out sometimes. And sometimes you just have to go with, if you don't have time, if you're just sight reading something, somebody just throws a sheet in front of you and you have to play it. You don't have time to think about all the perfect fingerings that would make things smoother. But when you have time to think about it, you would try to look at all those string crossings and avoid the awkward ones and try to do more of the easier ones, okay, the natural ones. So that's, I think that's pretty much all we have to talk about with number 5. But it is more challenging in that, and that's the one thing I wish Noad had given you an exercise with just the B string notes, just to get to know the new notes. But right away, he throws in at least one note from the first string in each phrase. And in the third phrase, all 6 notes are in there. So, and another thing about the third phrase, I'm glad I thought about this, you're starting with the pinky. I think you caught on to that, right? It's pinky on G, going to third finger on D. So it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now this is an awkward string crossing. You're going from middle finger on the D to index finger on the F. So it feels like you're kind of reaching a little more with your index. And so that F, plus it's on the first measure of the next line, so it can really take you by surprise because it's across the page. You're going on the right side of the page, you're doing 2 measures, and then you have to go to the next line, and it's that index finger on F. Make sure you don't miss that it's index and not middle. And that's another little tricky spot, okay? So this is, like I say, it's getting more challenging. We're juggling 2 strings. We're juggling the notes, the rhythm, and the alternating. And you know how to, I'm not going to go over meticulously each thing you can do to separate those parameters, but say the notes in rhythm. That's one thing, like B, C, D, C, C, D, E, D. You don't have to quite go that fast, but you want to be able to keep a beat and say the notes. You don't want to go like on the second phrase, C, D, E, D, that you don't know them. If you're going that slow, if you're going in between the notes, when you're saying the notes in rhythm, you're not keeping the rhythm, and you don't know them quite as well as you should yet. And that's not a derogatory thing. It's just, you just need to know them better. You don't know them as well as you should. So you should be able to say them in rhythm, the names of the notes. So very important to know the names of the notes. And then to work on the rhythm, just count and do an open string. And to work on the alternating, just say, like M, I, and you might do the string changes. M, I, if it changes strings, just do that, but just reduce it to open strings where you're not using your left hand at all. Just put your left hand up here or something. Okay, so to work on the 3 elements separately, the way we did in exercise number 2, you can do that with any one of these exercises. So enjoy. This is exercise 5. Try to feel like you're accomplishing something. We're learning something. It may seem like we're going really slow and we've only got 6 notes. Don't think of it that way. Just enjoy the process. Okay? So, like John Hedger Guitar Studio on Facebook. and subscribe here. Thank you.